Okay, I will call the Board of Public Works meeting to order. We'll call it 6:59. Well, let's get a roll call first. Trish, can you call roll, please?
Sure. Mayor Lisa.
Here.
Jeremy Slowinski.
I heard him on the phone.
Yep.
Fred Hopkins-Grover.
Here.
Mary Kneebone. Here. Sean Morrow.
Here.
Ginger Keemer. Here. And Makira Zarazul.
Here.
Everyone is present. We will continue on. Item number 1 is the Director's Report, which covers some of our 2021 projects. Director Badoon joining us remotely. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Just real quick on a couple of these, the road resurfacing and street improvement projects. There's still lots of work to be done, of course, on those, but just, I guess a positive note with those is that within the next couple of weeks, we should see portions of that work nearing completion with paving coming within probably a couple of weeks. So definitely things are starting to look more positive on those fronts. And definitely in the same breath, I want to thank all the people who've been patient with us. I know it's been difficult for people in the industrial park. There's only one way in, one way out. Hopefully the road will be paved soon and all the dust and the bumps will go away. As well as people on First and Buchholz and Forest, which should also be paved shortly. Definitely thank them for being patient with us and the contractor as we try to make things better. Moving on to the other ones, pavement maintenance project, just a shout out. I don't have the list, I apologize, in front of me, but we're starting to do chip sealing and seal coating the week of August 23rd. So they'll start to see in various parts of the city. We'll be putting out notices and we're making little interruptions to people's travel with those. Those are usually just short-term closures, an hour or two until things are ready to be driven on. But that will begin later this month. And then lastly, with the director's report, the fall paving, which also includes the alley project. Hopefully we'll be approving the bid here later in this meeting. But in preparation of that, we've already started, the streets department has started some of the work related to getting ready for that. That project will be a combination of in-house and contracted work. And so there's just a few things that they have already started on and will continue to do if we approve the contract.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on the Director's Report?
Mayor, I have a comment. Regarding the alleys, Director Badoon, someone in my district emailed me and was grateful for the notice, the letter that you guys sent out saying that the alley would when the repair was likely to start. So they were very appreciative of the notice. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions, I will move on. And that item number 2 is a presentation by Aecom regarding the recommended alternative for the Business 51 project. Amy, I am going to get this PowerPoint up, and you will need to just say next or something
Sounds good.
when I need to flip a slide. Give me a second to share. Share away. And we are good to go.
Can you play it from the, so this takes up the whole screen, so we don't see the words?
Yeah, let's see. We've
Put
had
a
issues
view.
with that before. Is that the play? No, this is the play, right? Play from the beginning? No, that's repeat. Start from the
There you
beginning.
go.
There we go.
I think.
Yeah, here's the issue. Now the audio cut out. So our speakers go for...
If it doesn't work, we can just shrink the text on the bottom.
Are we getting audio? We are not getting
No.
audio. Let me try again. It is speaker, community room, TVs. That's what it says. That is my speaker. No audio yet? Nothing. Okay, we are going to stop that. Are we back to audio now? Change to both speaker, change to headphones. I don't want that. I want community TV. I think we're on again. We have audio? Yes, we are back.
Okay.
Sorry, this is what you get.
Nope, that's fine. Can we pull the text, like, little divider thing way down so that the screen is a lot bigger? because that text everyone can read is not what I'm gonna say. So,
I'm not sure what
You
you're
know what I
getting
mean?
at here. Oh, this.
right there, yep.
So, like,
Just
you
drag
wanna
that way
move
down to the
that?
bottom.
No,
Can I try it?
yes. That's just moving slides.
Yeah, here, can I steal the mouse
Yep.
for a sec?
There you go. I got you.
There we go. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. So today we're here to talk about the recommended alternatives for the Business 51 study. We've had several public meetings. This project has been going on for probably a year and a half now, and I wanted to make sure that everybody here at the council too had an opportunity to learn about these recommended alternatives and to hear some of the same information that was shared with the public, that was shared virtually via our Q&A at our public meeting, and then is also online too. So what I'm going to go through today is not the exact same presentation online. It's a little abbreviated, but I've also noticed when we were getting a lot of feedback on the comment forms that have come in over the last week or so, that only about 55% of the people who filled out a comment form actually watched any part of the presentation. And there's a lot of information in the presentation that you cannot get from just looking at the exhibits, you know, or seeing a graphic on Facebook. So I wanted to make sure that you guys all had an opportunity to hear it firsthand too, if you haven't. So if you can go to the next slide, Mayor. Thanks. Okay, so at the beginning again of all the projects, it's always important to remember like why we're doing this in the first place. So the purpose and need for this project was to improve three main things. It was pavement, safety, and multimodal accommodations. And while we do that, we're trying to maintain efficient traffic flow out there on Business 51. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So this here graphic is showing a lot of the public involvement opportunities we've had to date. The planning phase was basically broken into 4 pieces, and we had different public involvement opportunities throughout that time frame. The numbers in the purple circles show how many people participated in each, you know, opportunity that was out there for involvement. Next slide. All right, so what we've heard here has been a mixed bag. You know, there was some feedback that's really consistent. Since the beginning of the project, everybody has been very adamant that we maintain as much right-of-way as possible. Nobody wants anyone buying more right-of-way than needs to be done. Nobody wants very many relocations. And folks want to keep the cost down as much as possible. On the flip side, there's been a lot of comments that have been, you know, contradictory too. We have some folks who feel very strongly we need to maintain a 4-lane roadway. We have other folks who feel that the traffic out there right now is too fast or they feel unsafe crossing the road. So it's definitely not, you know, everybody thinks the same way, you know, as you have in most projects. It's very diverse in the feedback that we're getting. You go to the next slide. So a couple of the things that come up frequently in the public comments, whether it's in the comment forms that were just submitted or ask questions to Facebook, were why can't we repave Business 51 and just leave it the way it is? You know, that's a frequent ask from members of the public. So if you think about it like this too, if we repave Business 51 and leave it the way it is, we're fixing one of those 3 needs we talked about. So pavement would be fixed if we repave it. But we wouldn't do anything to address safety. We wouldn't be doing anything to address the multimodal needs out there for pedestrians or for bicyclists. And it's also important that we recognize that a project of this caliber on Business 51, where we are digging up the entire roadway to replace all of the utilities underneath it, which are also in pretty rough shape in certain portions of the corridor, this comes around like once every 50-ish years, 50, 60 years. This is not something we do frequently. It'll be a once in a generation thing for most of us. So to get the opportunity to do all that, if we want to actually fix these needs, this is the time to do it, is now. You want to go to the next slide? Another frequent thing that we're hearing too is concerns about traffic. You know, a lot of our alternatives talk about potentially reducing the roadway from 4 lanes, which is 2 lanes in each direction, to a single lane or 2 lanes in each, or 1 lane in each direction. And a lot of people wonder, you know, is that going to work? Like, is there any precedent for this? Has this happened before? You know, how do you know it's going to work? So we looked up a lot of different areas around the state that have similar or greater traffic volumes than Business 51, where this type of road diet is a typical name for it, has been implemented. And this is just, you know, a short list here in Wisconsin. This has happened in communities all around the country, you know, mostly to improve safety. There's tons of independent studies by the Federal Highway Administration and others that document the safety benefits of reducing lanes on roadways. And it's also a way to improve livability, you know, get room within your constrained right-of-way to do things like have a wider terrace, put in a bike lane, you know, and make it more comfortable for all people who are using the corridor. Okay, next slide. So now we got to the point here where we had our alternatives and we wanted to think of a way to like evaluate them and compare them to one another. Next slide. So we came up with 15 different unique independent evaluation criteria. So these criteria up here, they range from, the obvious things like cost, how much right of way, down to what kind of safety impact does it have, what is the public opinion for this, how do emergency services handle it, and we developed a scoring system that's a rating of a 1 through 5. Now, if you look at the way, when we get to here in a little bit, it's going to show you how all the scores worked out. It's a complicated system, okay? We have exhibits online that detail what the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 means for every single one of those criteria and how they were applied for every single one of the alternatives. That's something that I'd encourage you guys to take a look at, after this or in your own time so you understand where it all came from. But the important thing too is that none of this was weighted any differently from another. So all 15 of these were compared, equally to each other, all part of the piece of the puzzle to make that decision. And the reason some of these were picked too is because eventually when we want to build this, we have to get through the environmental process and complete an environmental document. Many of these things are exactly what that environmental document makes us compare so that we can, justify why we selected a certain alternative over another. Okay, and the next peg. So those criteria were then applied to these areas that have multiple alternatives, okay? So anywhere where you see, two things going on at the same time, we took those criteria and applied them to those areas to come up with a recommendation. So if you go to the next slide, we start with the south segment. We broke the project, remember, into 3 segments, south, central, and north, depending upon, land use and adjacent businesses and things. So in the south segment, the southernmost part, this is the south city limit now up to Patch Street. The recommendation here is a 2-lane roadway with a 2-way left turn lane. And if you look at that chart on the right, it's a simplified version of what you can find online. It shows that the 2-lane roadway, scores higher, which is good. Good is the highest score is what wins. So if you scored 10 points higher here, the main reasons were because this one doesn't require hardly any right-of-way as you go down the corridor. Generally speaking, it fits within the existing corridor, except at some of the signalized intersections. Okay, so because of that, it's also the least expensive. And because of this, too, by reducing the number of lanes, it's a big win on the safety side for pedestrians there because they have fewer lanes of traffic to cross, which is inherently a safer option for a pedestrian when they're crossing their roadway. Can you want to go to the next slide? And also in the south segment, there's 2 intersections where we looked at multiple options. Okay, Rice Street was one of them. So one of the things we're trying to do here is line up some of the intersections that are just offset by like a little bit. Back in the day when someone built the grid in the system, they kind of forgot to line some of these things up. So when we look at reducing the number of lanes here too, another consideration is trying to get people to signalized intersections when they're on a side street. It will be easier to turn at a signalized intersection and make a left, especially during a peak hour, than it would be if you were at a stop-controlled intersection. So if we can do things where we've got Rice and Whiting just barely offset from each other and align them into one spot, you'll see this alternative actually scored the same as the one that kept it like as is today. However, we feel strongly that the realignment will provide better traffic, better safety operations, better connections for pedestrians and school kids kind of trying to cross that roadway there to get over to school on the east side, that we feel that outweighs the additional cost and the right-of-way that was necessary here. So that relocation is recommended. On the next slide is the Patch Street intersection. This is another spot where we had multiple alternatives that were considered. And the goal here was to create a single signalized intersection with just Francis and Patch. So again, here the 3 options, the one that scored the highest was option 3, which is what you see in the bottom there. It realigns a little bit of France and a little bit of Patch so that we can form that one singular intersection. And this particular design was chosen over another one that realigned it as well because it had fewer relocations when it came to businesses. So we had a different design that impacted the strip mall on the southeast quadrant, but there's 8 businesses impacted in that one strip mall. This one was kind of an attempt to sort of split the difference. It reduced the cost and it minimized the number of relocations that were needed. Okay, the next slide. Okay, in the central segment, if you want to keep going to the next one. This area for most of the residential area is a spot where we really only had one feasible alternative that we could get down there that met all of our purpose and need of hitting on the pavement, the safety, and the multimodal while still fitting in the existing right-of-way. So that alternative is this 2-lane with a 2-way left turn lane down the middle. It does have a wider grass terrace than what's there today. It has a sidewalk There are no bike lanes in this section. They do not fit on the roadway within the existing right-of-way, while still providing these other amenities. And another nice thing about this alternative is that it includes several pedestrian islands, like you can see in one of the pictures there, at some of the stop-controlled intersections to allow people an easier and safer way to cross the street, and a median refuge there as well. Okay, next slide. A spot that there were multiple alternatives to consider in the central segment is right in that core area between Clark and Main. Okay, so in this area, we have a lot of traffic congestion. And another thing I wanted to make sure that everybody understands, because I see this as a misconception in some of the public comments too, is that the footprint, the actual like number of lanes that exist on the street is not being reduced from 4 down to 2, like right there. We're talking about through lanes when we talk about these alternatives, okay? So the picture down in the corner there is 1 through lane in each direction and 1 very long look-ahead left turn lane essentially in that whole stretch between Ellis and College. We're also looking at proposing a right turn lane that does not exist today as you approach Main and as you approach Clark, okay? So that intersection actually gets a little bigger than what it looks like today. And the reasoning behind that is because we recognize, as people are saying that, there's a lot of traffic there, like how are you gonna reduce the number of lanes? It's not really reduced, okay? That is a big intersection, and we do need to make sure that traffic flows well through there, because by getting traffic through there, it's what allows the rest of the corridor to have a skinnier typical section if we can make those intersection operations work well. Okay, so the big difference between the 2 alternatives compared here, it had to do with the terrace. Right now, the sidewalk is right against the road. So the one that says labeled raised median, that one includes a 6-foot grass terrace. So you get the same terrace you've got now proposed through the rest of the corridor. And it also includes a really skinny raised median like you can see in that picture in the middle. And you might be looking at that thinking like, what's the point of this? Why is this here? The big point of that is because we have a safety issue and a lot of congestion in those couple blocks. So that median is there specifically to prevent vehicles from stopping in one of those left turn lanes to try and make a left into their driveway or into the apartment complex that exists in that area. So there's a few driveways that would be impacted by that. They could only do a right in, right out, because we want to keep everything moving efficiently in that short area between College and Ellis. Okay? And then the other thing to point out too with this is I recognize that the City Council has recently approved a study of Clark and Main to consider doing a one-way to two-way conversion, okay? These recommendations are based on the info we have right now, which does not include the results of that study, okay? So that study could change things here, but right now we're going off the data and the information that we have. Okay, next slide. At 4th Avenue, this is an intersection where we had multiple options. We considered a signal and a roundabout. Now, something to keep in mind was the traffic signal proposed is not the same as the traffic signal you see there today. Okay, it was going to require a larger footprint, just like the roundabout requires for this design. They both impacted the same properties on the south side of the intersection on either side of the road, okay? And this roundabout here scored a little higher in terms of the rubric and the way things were analyzed. And some of the reasons for that too are, on the pedestrian safety side, there's been some other questions like, well, how is a roundabout gonna work near the university when we have a large pedestrian movement? And something to think about there is that by far the safest thing we can do for pedestrians is slow down vehicles. When vehicle speeds are slower, pedestrians are safer. And a roundabout does that, okay? This roundabout is also different than the one at North Point. So if you're thinking it's hard to get through the North Point roundabout as a pedestrian, this is only a single lane, okay? It has 1 circulating lane, so 1 car is coming at a time. There is 1 lane for you to cross as a pedestrian and a little splitter island in the middle for you to take it in 2 stages. Okay, so will there be times when there's, a significant amount of pedestrians crossing there because the university is there? There will, but those pedestrians will make eye contact with the drivers will yield, and everyone will go about their business. In off-peak times, when there's not pedestrians around, this is gonna be much more efficient. It'll have less delay for vehicles, there'll be less queuing. It operated better on a traffic side too than the signalized intersection did.
I'm going to throw in a real quick question here, because right now with the signalized intersections, you have walk and don't walk signs, which spread out the pedestrians, or I suppose squish up the pedestrians, so they move at that's the same time. Mm-hmm. With this, there is no signal telling them when to walk and don't walk, so pedestrians having the right of way cross at any time, and then the traffic has to stop. Mm-hmm. till that line of students stops coming. Just like have you seen what happens at, on Fourth Avenue between the
Yep.
HEC
Yep.
and the rest of the campus? So you can back up traffic. How does that affect the roundabout?
Yeah, so I mean, that's true. There will be times at peak hours when school, classes are in between session and we'll get a lot of pedestrians. Cars will have to stop for a few minutes to let the pedestrians through, depending on how they come, But something to think about there too is most college students are not signing up for the class that starts at 8 a.m. So when we see our peak traffic travel times, early in the morning, it typically doesn't align with the time when all the college students are trying to cross the street. They're trying to go to school at 9 to 9:30. When we see the same thing in the afternoon, for our PM peaks, there's people coming back at, 5 o'clock. Yes, there will be a little bit of traffic delay for some of those pedestrian movements, but it's also, allowing all the users to have access to that intersection too. And one of the safety considerations with the signal is that basically if you're a pedestrian, you look at that walk sign and you just go. You don't check to see that the left turner has notice that you're in the intersection or that anything is happening. You see the little white guy in the walk sign and you go. Here, you are forced to make eye contact with that driver, and that driver is forced to slow down every time they come up there. So that is the, kind of documented reasons why roundabouts are safer for pedestrians.
Okay. The eye contact thing doesn't work not with everybody, because I can tell you, we've got flashing lights at Franklin, arguably one of the more scary intersections. Students are on their phone, they slap the button and step in. We had semis lock up. That would have been a bad thing.
Well,
this is the part that concerns me the most.
And a difference too between Franklin and this is because of when you design the roadway to enter a roundabout, it's specifically designed with curvature. So when you're at Business 51 in Franklin right now, it's just straight. There's, if you don't see the flashing light, you have absolutely no reason to think you have to slow down. When you approach this roundabout, every single time you're entering that roundabout that you have to slow down.
We've had a few tips in the roundabouts too, so not everybody slows down.
But as far as student crossing, you're not dealing with just grade school or whatever crossing, or high school kids. Every hour, you have a lot of students crossing through there.
Right. Yeah, I don't
So,
deny that
you're
there's a lot
talking
of
about
students.
slowing down traffic. This could be a hazard every hour for, 5-10 minutes. It could be a bottle up, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, we've looked at the pedestrian crossings through there. I don't deny that there is a high crossing percentage there. There is at Fourth Avenue, but we feel that this option right now produces the safest configuration by really slowing that traffic down to allow the people to cross the street safely.
Thanks, Amy.
Yep. All right, if you want to go to the next segment. Okay, so now we're in the north segment, and then you can go to the next side. Up here, this is another spot where the 2-lane alternative with the raised median did score a few points higher than the 4-lane. This one looks much different than the one in the south segment, however. This alternative includes that raised median there. It has 1 lane in each direction on the street. It has a painted buffered bike lane on the side of the road, a 6-foot terrace, and then your sidewalk. And one of the reasons this alternative scored better too is because, again, this is the least expensive alternative. It reduces the overall roadway footprint that you see there by a few feet. And it is going to be safer, again, for that east-west crossing and really provide a robust, multimodal network in an area where we have all the university students. We have a lot of folks that do walk and bike and, would probably utilize the corridor more if it were safer to do so. Another thing I've heard from the public, too, that applies to all these alternatives is they're asking, well, how does this work for emergency vehicles? Are we thinking about that by reducing the number of lanes? And on this particular one, that buffered bike lane also serves as an area for cars to pull over so emergency vehicles can pass them. When you're looking at the rest of the corridor where there's the 2-lane with the 2-way left turn lane down the middle, the 2-way left turn lane is what emergency vehicles use to travel up and down the corridor. They do that all over wherever we have these kind of configurations. So there's those considerations are still being met, and we did meet with the fire department on more than one occasion to specifically go through the design and talk about their minimum width requirements in various areas. Another thing I'll say too on the north segment while we're on it, because this was another thing I saw come up a few times on social media, was the concept of what kind of traffic volumes are we using out here? Did we look at what's going to happen in the future? Do we use COVID volumes? Do we use pre-COVID volumes? And to that one, I'll say that the traffic volumes that we use for this study were pre-COVID, so they do not take into account any reduction that happened during COVID. We also, though, looked all the way back to 2005 and charted out the traffic volumes at various points along this corridor. And the overall trend is that those volumes have been decreasing from 2005 to 2017, and that doesn't count COVID. But we did not analyze those volumes. We said to ourselves, somebody's gonna say that's not true. Stevens Point is gonna grow, So we took those volumes and still applied a 0.5% per year growth factor to them out 20 years and used that in our traffic analysis so that we had like a factor of safety in there for all of the traffic analysis that was done for this project too. So that we're not, just wanna kind of clarify there on what kind of traffic was used too. Okay, so I think that's the last one. Then at the end, this just shows an overview of, what was recommended where on the option and a couple pictures. And like I stated earlier too, there is a lot of information online in the last, it's under public meeting number 3. There's details and large exhibits on all of these alternatives. And there is, breakdown of the scoring system and everything that you could, probably be looking forward to if you need some more information on it.
Thank you very much. That's it.
Okay.
We will still be taking comments. You can send those through our Public Works Department. Attention, Director Badoon will make sure all of that information gets shared with Aecom should any additional comments come up. Item number 3 is to award the 2021 fall paving project to American Asphalt of Wisconsin in an amount not to exceed $236,769.36. Director, do you want to add anything before we look for a motion?
Listen, really just one thing. I think as far as this project here, just want to point out, I wrote it in the memo, but these prices are a little bit higher than what we've seen in the past and even what we've seen on the other contracts we have out there at the moment. And just I'll just point out that we did analyze that and give consideration. We are asking for some specifics. We're doing this paving kind of across the city. And so we're kind of asking them to move about and to mobilize several times. And we're working in small areas. The alleys, of course, are going to be a little more challenging for them to do. Ultimately, though, we thought that the bid was reasonable from American. And so that's why we're recommending that we go with them.
Thank you very much. I need a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Morrow.
Sorry.
Slowinski, do you want a second?
Slowinski.
That's fine. Thanks.
Thank you. Seconded by Slowinski. Discussion?
I had a quick question
Yes.
for Director Badoon. I believe I read in the packet that this bid was about 10% higher than last year's. What was the actual amount that was budgeted, or, roughly what was budgeted for this project? Do you have that on hand?
Well, I can, Director, you have that information handy?
I don't have that information
But
handy.
generally, explain the process maybe, Director, of the fall paving projects and how we get the money for that.
Yeah, so fall paving, then this one also includes the alleys, which we do have. We set aside, we had 50,000 from last year, we carried over to this year. We've added 50,000 that we kind of set aside and earmarked from that. So there's the 100,000 base is what we otherwise have specifically set aside for alley work. The remainder of it, the fall paving is always kind of made up of, when we try to look at our contracts to see where we are, each of our contracts carries a contingency that we carry forward. When we get to this part of the year, we typically have a good handle on whether or not we're going to need that. And so we start to look at all the monies that we otherwise have left from whether a project was, under the estimate for the original bid or where it otherwise is. So we look at kind of our financial statement at the moment and see what monies we have available to us. So we've done that, and we feel that we have, so the balance of that would otherwise be roughly a little over $100,000, available to us in various, the existing funds, as well as some of the operating general construction dollars we have that we put towards this. And that's how we size each one of these every year.
Thank you. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Generally, it's money that we hadn't spent on the other projects because they came in better than we expected, or we didn't have to use the contingency, and that tells us how much we can do.
Very
It's
good.
never enough, though.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is approved. Item number 4 is to accept an ordinance amendment in section 9.02 as it relates to speed limits. Director, anything to add?
I just wanted to mention that this actually was something that we looked at when the roundabout was first, constructed, and it had been brought up there. And since then, we've kind of been watching this. It came up again recently with a resident there about the speeds and how it is, which kind of comes in line with our original thoughts to do it. So it just seemed appropriate at this time that we do take measures we had been thinking about for the last 3 years to create a more consistent speed, through there. That variation for that kind of small stretch between the roundabout and Schofield. I think even myself, I sometimes kind of, come to that, realize that, especially as I'm driving southward, realize that, the speed limit changes in here and I have to obey that. So this should definitely help both the law enforcement as well as the safety aspect of driving through that corridor.
Okay, I need a motion.
Alder Morrow, so moved, please. For this
Motion by Morrow, is there a second? Seconded by Kneebone. Discussion? Proof positive that not everybody slows down for roundabouts. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? And that is approved, and we are adjourned at 7:29.
Videos of these meetings are available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.